Croeso and welcome. Before we start this week's episode, we just want to give a plug and shout out to our this week's producer, who is Ollie Todd. So big shout out to Ollie, who is part of the Taily tier on our Patreon. So anyone who pays up to the Taily gets a producer credit each week for helping fund the show and keeping the lights on and all that. So big diolch yn fawr to Ollie, and we hope you enjoy. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Ta-da! Patreon, baby! Oh, and if you want to get across our Patreon, you can figure it out yourself. You're smart people. Love you, bye.
Croeso and welcome to Tales for Wales, the pod that never fails to prescribe you the finest in historical whimsy and get you fighting fit for those riffs and tins you know and love. I'm Jack, and as always, I'm joined by what I'd like to call the nurse of the podcast, my good friend Franco. But today, we also have an extra special addition to the pod. The doctor is in the house. It's Mr. Stephen Owen Rule, a.k.a. Doctor Cymraeg.
Don't introduce me like that. Play it down, boys. Play it right down.
As we said before we started, the new spokesman of the Welsh language is here tonight. He's here to allay any questions, any concerns of the future of the language. He's here, and he's here ready to settle it and solve our problems.
Honestly, this is not what you had me sign up for. None of what you've just said was appropriate in any manner. But
well, we should
sidelined you.
We should probably explain for people who are coming over from your fans that we are traditionally a Welsh history podcast where we each week go through a different moment in Welsh history. But we ourselves are absolute amateurs, but we have a real love for all things Welsh, and as enthusiasts of the Welsh language, both second language speakers. Well, what would you call it? We learned it in school, but we grew up speaking English.
I'd say because we spoke English at home, but we were like a whole education basically in Welsh, wasn't it? Well, mine was anyway.
Yeah.
See, you've opened a can of worms already, see, because I would consider myself second language, but I was English speaking at home and in school. So I don't know whether I consider you. We'll put ourselves all in the second language category for this evening. Yes, all right, I've got you.
And lots of our listeners really enjoy your content online, and we really enjoy it because you make it very accessible, and I think a lot of our listeners enjoy us because we make Welsh history quite accessible. And I think both, like, Welsh language can be quite academic in school, and Welsh history isn't really taught that a huge amount in school. So I think we have a nice crossover of listeners here tonight, and we're going to go on an adventure together, mostly in the Flintshire region, but we're going to have
a real melting pot tonight. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
I just choked on thin air then.
So excited you couldn't even breathe. I love it.
What's everyone drinking to start off with?
Lads, I'm going to let you down. I was tempted. I was gonna grab myself a bottle of Wrexham lager, and I thought, you know what, this is perfect. You know, my neck of the woods, and I've settled on a Vimto.
Oh no!
I'm so sorry.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah,
right.
Let's just get the bit where I said Wrexham lager and just squeeze that in. Yeah.
I was gonna have Wrexham lager, but I had a Wrexham lager. Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
Well, I haven't been feeling very well this week, and me and Jack just did a road trip for the podcast, and it's broken me. It's like physically broken me. I've been so tired since.
It's like every one we do, we come back like less and less of a person than we first started. But this one's taking its toll.
We went to visit Llywelyn and Llywolab's, the last native Prince of Wales cave in near Bilth, and it was genuinely it was an amazing experience, but we then overdid it on we had Morladron, which is a pirate rum, and it just absolutely destroyed me. The drive home through the mountains, it was a lot.
Yeah.
It's not a drive you want to be doing if you've had a Morladron.
I had to pull over in Bilth, and we sat in this cafe for so long because I couldn't face getting back.
You just
in the
needed
car.
to gather your thoughts. I'm not going to lie, Franco, I love you, mate, but you were not the most high-octane company for that hour either. We just like
No.
pushed around our breakfasts, and I was going, what are you going to do when you get home then?
No.
Dunno. I just dunno.
I just hope I
Nothing,
can
I
make it
guess.
home. Yeah,
I
but
feel
I've
like
got
I need to come on a road trip with you guys. I think that's
definitely.
the next one. There's the
Yeah.
next
Definitely.
crossover.
That's it. We'll come up to Flintshire. Oh, we'll meet halfway.
Oh,
We'll do a
amazing.
road trip. That sounds
Sorted.
ideal. But I'm on the curling tonight though, trying to get back on, because I've had, like, you can hear for authentication. There's the
Snap.
second one of the night, but it's been the first one was going down like lead, but hopefully the second one's
Yeah.
better. What about yourself,
Always
Jack?
believing it. Always inverting on Trent's finest, mate. I'm on the same thing, to be honest. I'm on the same thing. What more do you want when you're suffering? You need something nice and tasty than
Yeah.
fucking piss lager like Carlin.
Weak, watery lager. And I suppose
Water.
you're on, what are you on? Something la-di-da?
No, I'm on the Carlin, mate. Like
Oh,
I
you're on
said,
it as
Burton's on
well?
Trent's
Oh.
finest. Yeah,
Oh, you were on it
don't
as well. I thought you just
don't take
added to
my
mine.
flippant comments as as derision. It was an endorsement.
Beautiful. Well, should we? Because this might be quite a long one with the three of us on instead of our usual rambling intros.
Mm.
We're going to do some facts around Flintshire because that's where our esteemed guest is from, and we're also going to do some Welsh etymology or just some interesting things we think about the Welsh language.
Yeah.
And to be fair, we haven't neglected Flintshire from our recordings before, but we've not done one specific to the area. So we thought we'd all try and come up with a little bit of history for it.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to, who wants to start? What's maybe Jack starts? 'Cause I know his bit of history is old, and then
Ooh.
I kind of carry on from where
Uh,
Jack finishes, and then I think the doctor himself. You've done some research as well,
yeah.
haven't you? So,
Well, look. I'm loving every part of my county and the history that goes with it. So, do you know what? I was going to ask you guys if you could go first, just because I don't
perfect.
want to cover anything that you guys chuck out there. So, I'm intrigued about this now.
Cool.
This is
Well,
where we've all got the exact same thing, isn't it? Like this would be typical of this podcast.
No,
to be fair.
I actually I checked with people beforehand. That's how
Yes.
professional I am these days. So we're all
Oh,
good.
God, we've
So
come a
Jack,
long way.
do you want to start off first?
Sure, yeah. Okay. So my little factoid about Flintshire. So modern day Flintshire, as it stands now, would have been inhabited way back when in the Iron Age by a Celtic tribe known as Deciangli. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. It might be Deciangli. I'm not sure, but Deciangli is how it thinks to me. Unlike some Celtic tribes, the Deciangli actually, sorry to say, surrendered to the Romans pretty early when the Romans came over in, I think it was 40 or 40 something AD. But they built a fort there that doubled as the Celtics' tribal capital. And this was in the Conwy Valley, and it's a place called Canovium, the fort. The Romans actually worked with the Deciangli, which was a very unusual thing for the time, because the Celts were great craftsmen, metal workers, and things like that. The Romans worked with them to make lead and silver, trinkets and sort of sellable items of lead and silver, which was abundant in the area at the time, apparently. And at an archaeological site there, they found 2 lead sows. And I thought sows might be like a metalworking term for something specific. It's not. It's literally just 2 like little
2 big metal
pigs.
pigs.
Two big
Beautiful.
metal
Oh,
pigs. Yeah,
that's
and
brilliant.
these things both weighed 200 pounds, almost 200 pounds each. So these are big
What?
old piggies as well, big old metal piggies. And but they had the inscriptions, and this is again something quite rare. The Roman inscriptions there, how they would inscribe all the metals with like sort of the name of the craftsman and the date it was made and everything. But they actually credited the Deciangli tribe in there as well
Wow.
on these big piggies. So yeah, that's my little tidbit for Flintshire. So yeah, I love that. It's like, oh, we got all these lovely resources. What should we do? Oh, smelt it.
Let's
2
make a pig.
massive pigs.
Yeah,
Well,
I love that. I wasn't aware of that. That's incredible. I mean, you mentioned that Deciangli or Decangli, as I say. I mean, there's a place near Conwy now called Deganwy, which is straight from that
No way,
that
yeah.
name as well. And I'm not surprised to hear about the pigs, to be honest, because pigs are massive in Welsh and Celtic mythology. So it really doesn't,
They
and in
are,
Irish
yeah.
as well. So it doesn't surprise me about that. What surprised me is the blinking size of them, the fact they'd go to that extent to make them.
You would think, wouldn't you, if they were selling these like trinkets and things like that, and weapons and God knows what they were making, and it was actually they had an economic effect on the area. Why would they go?
Yeah.
Let's waste two lots of £200 of lead
You
on
don't
making these big
appreciate
sows.
art. That is
Well,
a
that's
thing
it.
of
Yeah,
beauty.
That's very true.
yeah. I'm thinking economically. Where's the
You're always
artist in me
thinking
gone? Yeah,
economically.
yeah.
Always driven by the money, not by the pigs. We done quite a bit on Celts, but we focused more on South Wales, haven't we? So to hear them
Hmm.
like actually work with the Romans seems pretty rare and quite unique because usually the Romans pretty harsh in how they treat the locals. I'm assuming they
You can
probably
see how
were.
it was a bit of a tit for tat kind of relationship, though. Like I said, they made this barracks almost this fort to house the Roman infantry there, but they let the Decianglo. How did you say it, Doctor
I
Cymraeg?
look,
How do you say it?
don't now because you put me on the spot. I've always said Decangli. I don't know whether it's
Decangli.
Deciangli though. You're making me question myself.
Well,
But the
we
Deck
always
Angli, I can
struggle with
imagine them
the.
getting a little, the fact that they got a bonus out of it is having like a tribal
Yeah,
center.
Mm.
That kind of, you can sort of see that symbiotic relationship there. I
scratching
think that's
one
quite
another's
interesting.
back and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
that's
my
cool.
my bit of history, I'm kind of going to do like I knew you were going to finish after the Romans, so I thought I'd do like a potted history for our listeners who might not know too much about the area. And I thought I'd cover from like a potted history from the Romans up until the conquest of old Eddie Longshanks, so Edward the First. So, yeah, so once the old Romans finally effed off out of there at around 410, even though they left most of Wales by 383, they left like the whole of the UK by 410, and then Flint itself became something like a buffer zone. It was like the sausage to protect the egg from the beans on that Alan Partridge style sketch. And yes, this buffer zone was used between the growing power of Gwynedd and the continued advance of the Anglo-Saxons in Mercia. And also, we mentioned already some relationship with Ireland. That area was specifically used to having Viking raids from Dublin. So you had this like melting pot of quite. We said melting pot so much already tonight, but it's gonna. I'm sure it'll come up more.
it's
But
it's a great
Flint,
analogy. It's a great one.
it became really battle hardened because it was kind of switching hands an awful lot, and he actually got given the name Perferthlad, and I hope I said
Mm,
that right. But it's like a contraction or like a portmanteau of the word Perfedd,
mm.
from the Middle Welsh Perered, and the Proto-Brythonic. I can't even say the word, but it's the per and the medius, and so it essentially translate into middle country, like conjuring this image of like no
Ah,
man's land between the powers of Gwynedd and Mercia, a place like that. So they'd call it the Perferth
Yeah,
lad, and if anyone wants to
that's the
spell it,
one.
it's Perfedwlad. But even before Gwynedd, back in like the 7th century, there's a place called Bangor East Coed, or Bangor East Coed, which
Yeah, yeah.
before 1974, which was in the historic county of Flintshire, there was a significant monastery established there by Saint Diniwide, and it became this greatly important Celtic religious centre in the 5th and 6th centuries. That was until some brute king from Northumbria came and smashed it all up in 16 AD, and he defeated the Welsh, led by Brochwil, at the Battle of Chester. And this scholar Bede, or Bede, he wrote that there's 1,200 monks were slaughtered in the attack. And today
huh.
there's no like physical trace of this monastery remains, and even the site is uncertain. But the slaughter was recorded as being so vicious that the story was carried on for centuries before it was penned down properly again. And then
Wow.
after this rather devastating attack, it left the place quite undefended for a while, and it became a part of the Kingdom of Mercia in the 8th century. And the area around Flint came under the control of the Saxons, and it's sited in the English side of the territorial dike. So you know that you have the Offers Dyke and the lesser known one, Watts Dyke.
What's
It was
like,
on
yeah.
that side of the border.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, to be honest, when I drive around my area, there's roads that are on Watts and Offers Dyke, so you can literally you're still in Flintshire, but you look one side, and historically you're looking out to what was Mercia, I suppose,
That's
and
cool.
places like that. So it's absolutely bonkers to be in that part of history.
Yeah.
So it's
So
great.
Joyriding the old Mercian lands, mate.
Joyride,
You're right there in
Yeah.
the middle of it.
Yeah, and the Perfect lad. But
indeed.
um, So it kind of shows that, so it's kind of crossed over a few times, and by 1920s, in Rhuddlan, some 14 miles further west of Flintshire, there was a Saxon frontier post, and it might not have properly functioned. It might have been quite mutually advantaged for both the English and the Welsh, because when it would cross hands, it would also help guard against the Vikings, who were again still raiding. So thanks to the Mercians building a bit of a stronger fort there, it became, or this outpost there, it became a place for whoever was in charge at the time could use it for protection. And
You see that a lot, don't you? With like when the Romans buggered off all those forts and stuff. That all the native Brits, well, for the most part, especially in the like West, sort of reclaimed them, and they like become strongholds.
that's where their strongholds came, yeah. And then in 1066, the area changed hands several times again, emphasizing that this area is like properly battle-hardened border town that was like rather relentlessly attacked from each side. However, by the time the Norman conquest came, it was properly in the hands of the English and was effectively owned by Edwin of Mercia. And the Domesday Book of 1086, which was created by William the Conqueror, which was that book he used to check what lands were owned by English noblemen, and how much they owed them in tax. So it was like a big tax book that they'd go around and say, okay, you own this much land, you owe this to either homage or those stuff. I think we'll do a proper episode on that, because even though it's mostly for English places, examples like this show that it came into Wales as well.
The
and it kind of
Doomsday
shows the
Book
extent.
sounds like a much more grim thing. Or, sorry, a much more exciting thing than something that just was on about taxes. And
Well,
you
it's
owned what
spelled
land.
Domesday, but lots of people pronounce it Doomsday Book. But it shows like the extent of the English colonialization in the area. Since like the modern county of Flintshire is heavily represented in its pages, but then Denbighshire is largely invisible. And lots of the areas in Flint, it mentions lots of the areas there, like Coles Hill and Ledbrook, which we call like Latbrook and Coles Celt. And this area is largely, there's not many Welsh origin names there. There's lots of English and Scandinavian, which is something we covered in our Viking episode. And then the 200 years between the conquest of England by William the Conqueror and the final defeat of Llywelyn in 1282, there's a relatively small area of northeast Wales was once again like home to some brutal warfare. And Owain Gwynedd, who we've covered before, took full advantage of the English Civil War, the earlier one between Steffan and Matilda, by seizing this Penrhyn lad in 1150, and he fought off like several English attempts to regain the territory. And there was quite a few attempts during his time, and even though it was kind of a short-lived thing, because he had to like give back a part of the land that he regained in his conquest and stuff. Again, it just shows that the area there is constantly switching hands, which must be so scary if you lived there. Like, imagine just being in this part, you don't know where you're like, who's going to be in charge from one day from the next, and how intense. And like, I just picture now, you wouldn't imagine if you were a civilian there, and you had Owain Gwynedd as your king for one day, and then it switches over and you're getting stabbed in the back because you were being loyal to him, and then crossing over for that. It'd be stressful enough growing up in those times, but to have in your land literally change country, like, well, we know they were more like kingdoms back then, but
the talks down the pub would be fraught, wouldn't they? You'd be going, "Oh, who's in charge this time? Jesus Christ, Owen Gwynedd coming in this time."
I didn't vote for him.
yeah, he's not my king.
Yeah. But then in 1272, Edward I came to the throne of England after spending years on crusade, and attempting to strengthen what remained of his Christian holdings in the Holy Land. So Edward I, we've covered loads. He is this terrifying king who had become battle-hardened, fighting in the Holy Lands, and we mentioned him a bunch of times, but his ascension to the crown was quite simply one of the worst things to happen to Welsh independence. And he was this dangerous adversary of the era, like the big bad guy of the time. He's in the film Braveheart. He's depicted there by Malcolm McDowell, I think it is. But he's just this.
Oh no, McGugan, is it?
Malcolm, something like that. I should have probably checked
now
beforehand, but he's fantastic. As we always say,
he's great. Yeah,
but he's called Longshanks because he had long legs. He's really big for the era. They say he's over 6 foot tall. He's been fighting for a very long time, and then he came back to take over the rest of the UK. And he'd learned the hard way of how to operate an army in unfamiliar territory. And where his father beforehand, Henry II, had failed, who'd constantly tried to invade Gwynedd and Flintshire and all those places in the north and failed, Edward came back much stronger, and he knew what to do and knew how to win. And From his time in the Holy Land, Edward, he came to understand the importance of building castles and securing territory. And that's one of his main successes against Wales and in the Scottish Wars. So Flint Castle itself can trace its DNA back to those in the Middle East because of how he used the same tactics over there as he did when he came back to Wales. So that's a pitted history. Is it potted or pitted? Potted history of Flintshire in Wales before 1282.
That's incredible.
So that was a
That was
long
a
old
whistle
chat.
stop tour, mate. No,
Sorry,
it's good.
absolutely.
That's a lot of information in a lot of time. I think my brain's got grown several in
That's the
diameter,
beers,
several
that,
centimeters
boys.
in diameter.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just crazy that quite a small area. It just like could you just have? I'd love to go metal detecting up there and just seeing how much you could find, because it just seems a place that was just
The
intensely
breadth
brutal.
of history as well. Never mind just how much you'd find. Just it could come up from any time in history.
Yeah.
Just so I mean, listening to what you were saying there, I was when you started, I thought, yeah, I'll know all this. And do you know what? There was so much in there. I was just thinking, gosh, I don't even know where I live anymore.
Yeah.
But it's incredible, boys. I mean, you mentioned no man's land and things like that, and I'm gonna firmly sit on my little self-made pedestal here. I went on Radio 4 about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Now this is
You just had to bloody
with a guy
name
called
drop,
Mike
didn't you?
Parker. What was that? Sorry.
You just had to name drop, didn't you? Go,
Oh,
Radio
I'm
4,
not
a
name
real
dropping.
talk
I'm going to
station.
name drop you guys after this evening, so look out. But
yeah, never go on their podcast.
not ever, no. No, but there was a guy called Mike Parker I believe he's from Kidderminster himself, and he's he likes his history, but he did a book called All the Wide Border.
Oh, what a good book. It's amazing.
Mate, it's incredible, but he was doing the part of sort of Flintshire, Wrexham, borderlands, and he mentioned this sort of no man's land, and even today, mate, you can feel that people don't know how to identify with themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very strange place that there's just, it feels like it's, even though the people themselves haven't been, oh, I'm Owain Gwynedd today, or today I'm Mercia, or whatever else, it just seems to, I know this seems a little bit, I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost in the land that if you live in that land, you don't know where you belong. And it's a strange feeling. And
to keep
I would,
to go with your land sort of metaphor there, mate, it's like if you're not a part of a greater whole, if you like, for long enough, that sort of seed doesn't take root, does it, of your like identity,
that's a great
your
way
sort
of
of
putting
national
it.
identity. Oh yeah, mate, when I thought that up, then I was like, I gotta say this. This is gonna land.
I think that can be true for lots of the border towns, especially like mid Wales and the northeast, because like places like West Wales have quite a strong identity, like North Wales has a strong identity, South Wales has a strong identity, even though that itself, it's people from very North Wales would say, oh, that's not as Welsh because it doesn't speak Welsh as a first language or whatever. There's more of a, well, you have a united history for a long time against the Normans, etc., all that stuff. A town that's always passing hands, I imagine it's well, I actually weirdly I was listening to a podcast this morning. Really, it was what's it called, Parenting Hell with who are they? Rob Beckett and Josh Widdicombe. So two comedians who have, very, very little knowledge of Wales, and that's not what their remit is. But they mentioned today people in Wrexham, because they used to do lots of gigs in Wrexham, and they always say they feel sorry for the people in Wrexham, because people in Wales were like, oh, you're not Welsh enough, and then people in England go, well, you're Welsh, so like they feel like this, oh, where do I belong, kind of thing. And if two comedians from the south of England kind of pick that up when they're there, I think, well, it must be pretty palatable, palpable.
Yeah. I agree with you, and I've never really put my finger on it myself, or I suppose never really taken any time to consider it myself. But you're right, it is. I mean, my wife's from Porthmadog, so she's very much West Wales, and so I do get the old, she'll give me a couple of jibes now and again in good faith. But honestly, it does happen. I mentioned Radio 4 before.
Oh no.
Yeah, I
again.
filmed for S4C about a year ago as well, right?
Here we
So
go.
just dropping that in there. But here we go. Yeah, you look out. But honestly, though, I was doing this program called Am Draw. It's actually coming out in a couple of weeks on S4C, and we were up in sort of the Eryri, we're talking Gwynedd, big mountains, and we sat up there, and there was these. We were just preparing to have a chat with to do more of the filming, and there were two other people who were up there. They weren't filming with us; they were just out for a stroll, right? And one of them went up to me and said, "Oh, ti'n siarad Cymraeg?" I was like, doing trio. I'm trying my best, like. And they came out and they said, "Oh, so lle ti'n dod o? Where are you from? Lle ti'n dod?" And I said, "Oh, dwi'n byw in Wrexham." And they said, and the first thing they said in Welsh was, "Oh, do you know why there's a Welsh flag in the Penmaen Mawr tunnels?" So literally about halfway in Wales, there's tunnels on the A55, the sort of North Wales Expressway. The part of it goes through a mountain essentially, and in that tunnel there's a big Welsh flag. And they say, "Do you know why there's a Welsh flag there?" And I said, "Oh, is it because that's where Wales starts?" And she looked at me with the straightest face and went, "Yep." Do you know? And I just feel like, I just felt like, really,
Yeah.
Oh, mate, we've said a few times on this pod before. In one of our like archived episodes, that's never ever going to see the light of day. Right? We did like a top 10 top worst of things of Wales, and in the top worst, one of them we said was like the gatekeeping
Yeah.
of Wales and Welsh and stuff
Of
like
the
that, because
language
that is such a
the border.
detriment to everything, to Wales, not just Welsh as in the language, but like it's in the culture and like the feeling part of it and stuff.
it's
That is
rare.
like such a detriment.
No, I agree. It's rare, but it will take a big. It will take a culture shift. It will take people to say, the amount of people who'd say, "Oh, it's in siarad Cymraeg, do you speak any Welsh?" And they'll go, "No, I don't speak any." When they probably do. If they were to say and be honest and say, "Look, my Welsh is pretty limited," that's so much more powerful.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we went to a school in Barry in South Wales, the
Oh
very
yeah,
first Welsh language school in the whole Vale of Glamorgan. So there was only
wow,
2 years above us, and the school next to us used to throw mud and bricks at our window, going, "You Welsh cunts, you Welsh
Yeah.
cunts!" And then
that's mad.
and we were. But then, so my friends who went to that school, they left at year 11 and they went to Barry College. Then they went to Cardiff College, some of them did. And my mum was a teacher there, and she'd
Right.
see their forms. And on that form, it would say, "What is your Welsh language?" And they would say, like, non fluent, or like, if there was 5 categories, uh, and one being the lowest, 5 being the highest, they'd put themselves at 1 or 2. And they went to the whole Welsh medium speaking Welsh. And they were so low in confidence that they would say that their Welsh was 1 or 2. And my mum would be like, "Your Welsh is 4 or 5. Like, you can
Easy.
understand an entire
Yeah.
conversation, you can reply the entire thing, just because you don't know every treiglad, every mutation, just because you don't know,
Yeah.
it's like magic. No one in English knows all that stuff, but in Welsh, you're sometimes pinned to a hide. It always feels like a
Yes.
test when you're speaking it, and you always feel like the other person
Yeah.
might be
Does,
judging
and
you.
we really need to get out of that
100%.
and it's going to take some time, but I could not have put it better myself. People really do look at themselves and think, my Welsh has to be perfect before I could, because I think because it is a very literary language. It was one of the first
Yeah.
literary languages in Europe, and I don't know whether that's sort of drip fed through into
Yeah.
us now, where we think, like, if I
Yeah.
can't use it perfectly,
And I
I
think
don't have a right to use it, and that
we're,
couldn't be further from the truth.
we're quite a low confident country as well. I think
Yeah.
so. It's like a lot of things like that. We get, you always panic. Someone's going to say, "Hey, do you think I can go? You're not speaking Welsh properly." It's like, as if anyone would ever do that, and if they did,
Yeah.
it's shame on
They
them.
wouldn't.
No, they
Exactly
never
that.
would they?
No, they wouldn't.
I think
No.
as well that like the sort of from personal experience certainly, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me on this. Frank's going through Welsh education. You are sort of chastised is a bit of a harsh word, but you are corrected constantly. So you get a treiglad wrong, a mutation. You get you get the gender wrong of an object. You're corrected. And I think what you were saying there, old Doc, was about. I love calling you Doc, by the way. It's such a
Yeah,
cool
I
I
nickname.
love it as
I
well.
feel like I'm in fucking Back to the Future or something. It's great. But the but it's like you were saying about because it's one of the oldest sort of literary languages in Europe. I think anyone maybe in the generation above us, that would be our teachers in school, it's really hammered home to them what a prestigious thing it is to know this language, and
That's a great point.
what a privilege it is to have a language that's so old and ancient, and you're speaking it now in the modern day sort of thing. I think maybe that, although that's a great point, that prestige goes through, and then it sort of doesn't leave a lot of wriggle room
Yeah.
for making the mistakes,
I think that's why
I
your
think that,
stuff is so good, because my partner's from Manchester, never
Right.
spoke Welsh before, and now because she knows it's important. Well, it's not. It's important to me, but I would never make that someone else's agenda. She just loves
Yeah.
learning it, so she's learning it on Duolingo. But she follows all your
Brilliant.
videos, and your videos are
Hey,
so accessible.
did I tell you that I helped out on the Duolingo course?
Did you really?
And also Radio 4. I went on that once.
Oh,
That's amazing. Wow,
I
that's so
did.
good.
I was nowhere near the brains behind it, but I'm still in touch with the sort of lead guy on it. He's absolutely fantastic. But I did a bit of moderating a few years ago, so to be able to do that and be part of that was incredible, and to know that it really does help people. And look, I've learned other languages via Duolingo, and it'll
I'm
never
doing,
get you all
yeah,
the way there. But
no,
I tell you what, like I could have a chat with someone in Irish or in French, and I would put that down
ça va.
90% to Duolingo.
that's so good.
Oui, ça va indeed. Honestly,
Bloody
I
hell.
really could.
Same. Yeah,
It's
We
brilliant,
got
and it
you on here
works.
because we thought I wanted to call you Doc a few times, and now you're telling me you got your finger on the pulse of the linguist's heart in this
Well,
country.
so Emma, she can say, like, we always have a laugh with it, but she'll tell me her favourite things are milk and sausages and stuff, and we'll have like a silly conversation around it. But then when we went
Brilliant.
to Harlech, we went into a shop where it was like Welsh language friendly, and seeing her
Yeah,
like ask for things like a candle or
that's
say it's
amazing.
stormy outside, it was so cool, and she was buzzing from it. And I just think that's the
Mm.
excitement of a language, and it
I
doesn't
know,
matter
and
what
it
we're
really
to it.
is, and that's you're right. And I think you were trying to bring up there that I try and make the
You make it really
language.
accessible.
I try
Definitely.
to, yeah, and I think because it wasn't accessible to me. I know you guys mentioned you were in Welsh medium education. I never had that, and I was all all my education was through the medium of English. So,
That's
and
crazy.
everything I had at home was through English as well. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I always found that it was finding ways to make it accessible.
So how
That
did
and I
you?
just go
So
on.
how did you get over the barrier of it being quite a daunting language to learn? And at least we were kind of thrusted into it. We had
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So how did you get about getting into it?
I always tell people the same sort of anecdote, and it's true. It's I think from sort of the age of 12 or 13, Welsh was sort of like I felt like it was something I was good at, which was quite rare for me in school, and I found it was something that I could really enjoy. But then I found as I got further and further, it made me quite unique, and especially being in a place where I was so close to the border all the time, as we've mentioned
Mm.
already, being so close to the border, you do notice, every Wrexham game is a Wales-England game. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you can't, my mother's from Chester, but we can't all be perfect. We've got. Sorry to say Chester. You're allowed swearing, don't you? I'm allowed to say Chester, yeah. All right, boys. Cheers.
It's very
Yeah.
good.
She's oh yes, she's So I always had that sort of banter in my life,
Yeah.
and I found that Welsh made me a bit unique. The problem is there are a million and one reasons to learn Welsh, and only one of them is the wrong reason. And the wrong reason is because you don't feel Welsh enough. Chuck that right in the bin. You are Welsh enough as you feel, right? Don't worry about that. Yes, the language helps,
Yeah,
and it's
too
a
right, man.
beautiful thing to be part of. Don't get me wrong, but not being fluent in the language just yet, anyway, doesn't mean you're any less Welsh. But I felt that at the time. So, aside from it making me feel unique, I really felt like I wanted to do it to really cement saying, no, look, I've got every part of what it means to be Welsh. And I look back now, and that was naivety at best. But every other reason you might have for learning Welsh is the correct reason. But don't do it because you feel any less Welsh. But that's what I did, and I went through GCSE, and the teachers were wonderful, but the provision, and I'm a teacher myself now, and I'll put myself in this. The provision, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it's flawed. And I did A level, and I could come out and I could tell you in the poshest Welsh that a poem was written by so and so, but I couldn't even ask you how you were.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
I wanted to do history. I wanted to read history in university, and I got to the point in sixth form where I thought I will not be happy in my life until I'm fluent in this language. And I ended up reading for Welsh and the Celtic languages. So it even changed the way I wanted to go in my life, really. But I really wanted to do it, and I know I'm a rare case. I know I'm a head case at the best of times, but I know. But it just I did it for the wrong reasons, but I'm still glad I did it, if that makes sense.
That's really. I think the sentiment there is amazing, and I think we fully back that here as Welsh as you feel.
Definitely, mate.
And I think what Welsh
Oh, yeah.
language does is it does connect you to a history because it's such an old language. So that's a way of feeling more Welsh in the sense of feeling what ancestors spoke, but it doesn't define
Yes,
how Welsh you are. And I think,
could
yeah,
not have put it better myself.
that's something
Yeah.
we had a lot as well. I think growing up, like us, people next door to us in Barry Boys would literally, they'd have they'd it's like, I think it was a way to like wind up your rivals, even though they themselves are Welsh. They used to. I think there was a little bit of. No, I don't think jealousy or bitterness, but I think they felt a little because Welsh, like Barry, is a very rugby town as well, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think they saw if
There was as if definite element of maybe like because we were learning through Welsh and not English,
Yeah.
almost like, oh, you're better than us, you
yeah,
type
there's a
thing.
slight.
That's
Yeah,
what I
do you
felt
know what?
from
Maybe
it.
so.
And also, our school had so much more money poured into it because it was a Welsh language school.
Exactly, we had
And
that sort of the
but
resources because of it was the first one especially in the Vale.
it was
That
crazy how
that
different
oh
the
we had
school's
white
quality was.
we used to tell people to me that people can believe at we were in year 7, 8 or whatever, we had these like whiteboards that you
Electronic
had like
whiteboard.
electronic
No.
whiteboards, touch pens and stuff. And
Our
honestly, did we need those? Did we? Not
Back
at
no,
then,
all. Did that make us like learn through the medium of Welsh better? Not at all. But because the
and
money
I
was
very
being
much doubt
thrown
it.
at the
Yeah.
wall,
yeah.
it was just I think that was the kind of thing. And then
And
Barry Boys probably hadn't had a lick of paint in
well, that's
God
the
knows
thing.
how
My
long.
friends who were
So
in Barry Boys, we had like luckily our group of friends got on like really well with lots of people in Barry Boys. But I remember used to speaking to them, and they just felt like a different experience going to school in these two places. We shared the same school field, and we just like we had to change our class times because they used to beat us up because they were so much stronger and bigger than us because there were so many more years. So they had to leave school at 3:30, and I can't remember what it was, but there's like a half-hour gap between because they used to
and
batter
then
us when
to
we left. But the ones
stagger
who
the
didn't
lunch
beat us
times
up,
and break times, wasn't it? Because
yeah,
everyone used to get beaten up.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny. But I think. Did you have a fact for Flintshire? Because you were going to cover one, and I don't want to.
No, I would. You know what? There's so many things I could have talked about, and I'm thinking off the top. I'm thinking the mold riots in the middle of the 19th century, and the reason I thought about that was because it started in the village I grew up, largely because of not being able to speak Welsh and pay conditions, and it ended up in a riot. So I could have talked about that one. You've mentioned the Vikings. I was thinking of Maen in Chwitffordd, just up the road from me. There's a beautifully carved Viking stone up there. Um, You've mentioned the Normans. We've got loads of Norman castles up here. My favourite one is, I can see it out my window now. If it wasn't so dark, it's about 200 yards away, giving away where I live, called
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, Castell Caergwrle, Caergurley Castle, as we say in English. And if you look at that, it's a Welsh-built castle that was improved by Edward. So you can actually see English and Welsh masonry stuck together. It's
Oh no
incredible.
way.
Obviously, the Iron Ring and things like this. I thought of the Mould Cape, and I'm kind of going to chuck this one sideways now because I told you I was going to talk about the Caergurley Bowl, but
Yeah.
I'm actually going to slightly morph into some place that has gets absolutely zero airtime. So I'm going to thank you in advance for allowing me to talk about this for a second. Um, so
Cut
the
him off.
Caergurley Bowl is
Uh,
we cut him off,
I said,
dumb dumb.
wait till you hear
Um,
the edit, mate. Yeah, just don't thank us too
yeah,
early.
the edit will just be me talking about the Caergurley Bowl, like you said you would. But no, to be fair, again, a stone's throw away from where the Caergurley Bowl was found. So definitely, your listeners need to Google that. But
We'll
there's
do it. We'll dedicate an episode to it. I think
a
we'll have you back on for that on a
I
later
was about to
episode.
say
don't
we'll
tempt me. I'm already
furiously
having too
writing
much
down
fun
all
here.
those
Don't tempt
things
me.
then.
But no, there's a burial chamber. We're talking probably late Neolithic, early Bronze Age, and there's absolutely no mention of it at all anywhere. And well, there is one. That's hence where I found it. So I've been up there a few times. It's very very battered and flattened and farmed, and
Mm.
but there is something there. I mean, the village next to me is called Kevin Abaith, which is for the non-Welsh speakers, the ridge of the grave,
Mm.
behind the grave sort of thing. So there is this underlying notion of there being some sort of burial site here, and I I found an old tithe map from about 200 years ago, 150 years ago, or one was presented to me by a good friend of mine, and on that it was labelled as being a tumulus. but it was labelled as the what's the term in English? The old hag's apron full, or the witch's apron full,
Right.
which was just beautiful connotations of this devilish thing, and pagans don't go near these places, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But I thought then, what would that be in Welsh? And I thought, well, that's Barclodiad y Gawres, of which there are two quite famous ones, one being in Conwy and the other being on Ynys Môn, Anglesey, where there is a Neolithic burial chamber there, and it's actually quite renowned across Europe and the world, really, Barclodiad y Gawres. And it just struck me that in this place where we didn't, in the Bronze Age times, we didn't really build with stone in this area because there was plenty of wood, whereas the West, they build with stone because there wasn't as much wood. So a lot of the stuff that we have around here is gone. The evidence of it is totally gone. So the fact that there is still evidence that we were building in ways similar to those in the West and the rest of Wales and Scotland and Cornwall especially, and Devon and Cumbria and all those old Brythonic places. The fact that we have them here really shows this mishmash of what we call it, a mixing pot or a melting pot, boys.
Melting pot, yeah.
Yeah,
Ding,
one of those.
ding, another time. Yeah.
Drink every time you say mixing pot, yeah. But no, the fact that that we've got one here, and I really think we should make a lot more fuss of it. Really,
So
there was
how do you make more of a fuss? How because I do think we're bad at celebrating our own stuff, and if you're not, like, can you do a dig, or are people? What's the process of organising digs and things like that?
I think money's the big thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think if there was money involved, perhaps then we get a bit closer to it. But I've not so much campaigned. I'd say stop short of campaign, but I've put together things that I think, do you know what? Just put a plaque there. Just let people know there's something here. And then when money is a bit better, let's see if we can't spark someone's interest in saying, "Go on, let's have a look here, shall we? Let's see what we get."
So in line with kind of what me and Frank said before. We've been to a couple of places, especially like these road trips, for example. Like, we were very pleasantly surprised when we went up to see Ogof Llewellyn, or Llewellyn's Cave for the English, because just this weekend gone, we were like, oh my God, this signposted. But it's not like officially signposted.
Yeah,
it's someone has put like on a bit of like
100%.
wood. It's just like hand drawn Llewellyn's Cave. But that is more than a lot of things we've gone to see actually have. You got to kind of find it yourself and like follow things online.
And there's a romance to that as well, isn't there? There's a lovely part of that as well.
Absolutely.
However, it's never going to become mainstream if that's the sort of game we're playing.
It's the things like Owen Glyndwr's castle and stuff, his homestead, that should be far more better maintained and signposted.
Yeah, exactly.
There was actually today in the news that on Ynys Môn they found like 16 artifacts from the Iron Age, which was like a giant ram's head, and a bunch of things that appeared in a boggy sacred spring there. And we've done quite a lot on Ynys Môn for how rich in history that place is. And why it's called Ynys Môn after the Vikings and stuff like that. Why it's called Anglesey rather? I think there's so much underneath the earth, and me and my partner, I make it get into all this stuff, but we bought a metal detector, and we've not managed to do an awful lot because it's really litigious and like hard work to just go out and do things in Wales and England.
You got to spend a lot of time for very.
In Scotland, it's different.
You
can kind of you can go a bit more wild in Scotland, but in here, you can only do it freely on the beach without getting permission, which is, I understand, but I just want to know what's under there. And I love the idea of touching something that someone dropped, and the last person to have touched it is 1,000 to 2,000 years ago. Like, how mind-blowing is that?
Mad, isn't it? But those opportunities are out there, and it's almost frustrating sometimes. You just sit there thinking, God, I could find one of them. And you sort of lose yourself thinking, that would be cool. Do I declare it? Do I sell it? No. It's staying on my shelf. I can stare at it all times.
Yeah.
Well, we went.
No, it's just like, and the thing is, you'd love it as well. Do you know what I mean? You would look after it, and
Pride and joy.
Yeah.
So we went out with our wives one time. We were my old partners, and we went out with your metal detector. And we were so excited when we found, and I shit you not, it was probably like an old metal jerry can, and we were trying our damnedest to get that thing out.
It
Like,
was so
imagine
deep.
imagine the like the sort of excitement and fervor we'd be going for if it was like, oh, it's an ancient Saxon coin or something like that. You know, we'd have been going nuts.
I found a peg in my mum's back garden that was really deep in the ground, but it was a peg I put there when I camped in my mum's garden when I was about 10, and I was like,
No.
still felt like, oh, the last time I touched this was over a decade, like nearly 2 decades ago. I loved it.
You doubling over and someone, I'm touching something from 10 years ago. This is
Oh, it's me. It's my own. Hand.
Yeah.
But I love it, and I think there's a lot to be found in RS, and I think due to some sad like environmental issues, the oxygenation in the ground and stuff means we run the risk of losing a lot of it in not too soon into the future. So if anybody is a budding metal detector, head up to Flintshire and try and find as much as you can.
Give me a shout. I've pretty much located exactly where I live via the sites that are around me. So you might as well just knock for me if you're up here.
Yeah.
You sound like you've got like your metal detector like leant up against the front door. Like I'm always ready to go.
You wouldn't believe.
Yeah. And so they know that we've sent you from the pod. They can just drop a melting pot. That can be our code word.
That's a code word, yeah.
There we go.
A bit like, yeah, I've got you. Yeah, I'm with you.
Secret nod. So do you want to? We thought we'd also look at some fun things about the language, and I didn't want this to be like turning the language into a funny postcard kind of thing, but I noted down some of my favourite Welsh words.
Come on.
And then some. I really like the etymology of town names and of place names, because we mentioned before, like Welsh is really logical in many ways. So, like Cardiff, for example, the name derives from like the medieval Caerdydd with a Y, which also gives way to the modern Welsh, like Caerdydd. And the word Caed, because it comes from the word fort. So wherever there's a Caed in front of it, it means there was a fort there. And then the second part from the River Taff. So it kind of comes from Caerdydd, Cardiff, the fort on the River Taff, which people think has come back from like when the Romans occupied it like 2,000 years ago, and we still say that today.
Catchphrase, isn't it? Say what you see.
I love it. I really like that. I found one that I thought I hadn't heard of before called Cymrofiles Ceirw near Swansea.
Right.
Do you two know about this one?
No.
I've heard of it, yeah, but I'm not. Cymrofiles Ceirw. I've definitely heard of it, yeah.
So if you break it down, the valley, which is the Cwm part, the ford, Rhyd, and then the Deer Ceirw. So in Welsh, Cymrofiles Ceirw, in English, the valley of the ford of the Deer, which is very evocative, isn't it? But that only sort of been written down at the 19th century, and before that, it was called Cymru Cwrw, which is the bridge
well
of the
up
ford
our
of the
street,
Deer. So they changed the word Cwrw to Ceirw because of like Victorian sensibilities. So they wanted to try and get away from that. Yeah, so the place used to be called in English the bridge at the ford of the beer. So it was a very heavily drinking town, or where they brewed a lot of beer, but it didn't fit Victorian Wales.
This might be the biggest instance of Welsh oppression I've ever heard.
Lads, this is the next Doctor Cymraeg video. Campaign has begun to bring it back, and we'll celebrate with a pint of ale.
There's a pub there now, which I think like points towards it, which is the name doesn't quite translate, but it was like the Deer's drink, and it's a slight like reference to it being the place that beforehand used to be called Cwrw. But it's funny that you only see it written down. So before the 19th century, it was called something completely different, and everyone in the town went, "Yeah, we probably should." Maybe they just had a really bad booze problem. Like, let's change our ways.
I just think all the kids will start vaping soon. It'll be Cymryd a vape or something like that. Won't it? Just going along with what's there, you know.
That's so that was my. I think you got one for the country of Wales, so I won't go into that, but I'll let anybody else throw out some of their favourite Welsh etymologies.
Well, I feel like Jack should jump in here.
I've got a couple here. I'm trying to think which is the most interesting. Well, this is the one that was interesting to me. I was trying to look and find out what did the ancient Celts call themselves, if that makes sense, because obviously
that's a good question.
You know, you get all these written accounts from the Romans and etc. what they called them. And I came across this. Now, this was on a few sites. 'Cause I tried to cross-reference as best I could to try and determine if this was legitimate or not. But apparently, the modern Welsh word Cymro, which for those who don't know, which is means a Welsh person or a person from Wales, is thought to have come from an old Celtic word called combrogos,
Yeah.
which meant back in the day compatriot or countryman.
Yeah.
So that sort of makes sense in line with it. And that's just sort of where the Cymro in the modern Welsh has come from. So yeah, I was like I said, I tried to authenticate this, and a few sites did back it up. Other places, they were a bit more convinced that maybe that it was based off what Romans called Celts and things like that, or the Brythonics. So
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, but I thought that was interesting nonetheless.
It's bonkers you bring that up, because I think for me the first time it was attested was probably William Salisbury in the mid 1500s, and there was a book he wrote called Oll Synwyr Pen Cembro I Gyd, which in modern Welsh would be sort of the Holl Synwyr, so all the senses or the sort of phrases, I suppose it'd be nowadays, Pen Cembro of every Welsh person. So it's essentially a list of phrases from the time, but he referred to us as Cembero. So the chem in that, like you say, is com or keed these days, joint, and the bro in that is another word for glad or tir, which is country. So those who are the same in one's country. For me, with the combroggy bit, I feel like it's an educated guess more than a definite. Obviously, it's not attested anywhere. So the word keed or com, as it was then in Brythonic, existed, and the word broggy from nation would have existed as well. Whether they were, stuck together as a term and then on top of that used to describe themselves, we can never know. But that is essential. And then obviously the Romans came along and went, well, we'll just call it Cambria then, and sort of went with that. And then obviously you've got Cumbria as well then, and things like that, which is the same thing. But it does all seem quite funny the way that we call ourselves those of the same country, and then you've obviously got Waylass in Saxon English, which means stranger.
That's it.
Which
like
is ironic,
isn't it? Like
and
a stranger, foreigner.
however, there is a debate in that as well, that it also refers to Roman, and they would use the Waylass term to mean Romans, and obviously we were Romano Britons at the time, and we sort of defended that term really. We use a lot of Latin words, and those people are sort of staunchly very purist in their traditions and language, are actually really very defensive of the sort of the Roman influence, even though it was a total takeover and a wipeout of the Celts at the time. They reset and really defended Christianity and the Romans and Latinization of the country. It comes from that. So there's a good school of thought that the term Wales just means you're a bunch of fucking Romans, really, which I quite like.
Do they call that for the Cornish then?
Exactly that. Yeah.
We did an episode on Cornwall, and
no, I haven't heard that one.
I went to Cornwall. I absolutely love the place,
really
and I found it really interesting. The people there are so similar, and there's so much of the same problems they face that Welsh language faces and small nations face. But they gave me a speeding ticket on the way home, so I've never quite forgiven them.
so we fucking hate them now. We don't ever talk about them ever again. Yeah.
You should have written an apology in Cornish. I could have helped you with that. And then,
Can you do some Cornish? That's impressive.
Do you know what? I tell people I can speak pretty good. My Cornish is good, but
the problem is Cornish.
Well, no, I have to caveat it. People say, "Oh my God, that's really impressive!" Right? I studied Middle Welsh in university. If you can speak any Middle Welsh,
you're pretty
right?
Much.
It's Cornish, okay? No disrespect. There's a couple of words that are different. They've got some amazing words. Some of the words they've got. So, guys, a little test for you. What's a sofa in Welsh? Don't overthink it.
It's just sofa, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. Sofa, right? In Cornish, gwely dydd, or in Welsh, gwely dydd, a daybed.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
I mean, I'm not being funny. That's just
that is
genius.
So good. Yeah.
Gwely dydd. That's so
and
good.
so, I just think it's absolutely incredible. And there's another one, I did a video on it recently, and all right, the term privedio is the term for toilets, but there is a colloquial term for it. And, like in Welsh where we put va at the end of a word to sort of mean a place. So meddyg from medicus in Latin, so a sort of doctor's surgery, so a place where something happens. Mynedfa, mynd is to go, va is a place, so a go place, an entrance, right? We do it to make a location. You not, boys, right? One Cornish word for a toilet is pissva.
That's amazing.
That's not a joke.
Franco, you saying earlier about how Welsh is like a say what you see language. Jesus Christ, that's just taking the biscuit.
I'm on this sofa all day. It's as if I'm sleeping here. Well, you should say that.
So
it's
good.
just brilliant.
I can hear you speak about things all day, mate. It's like I've got like a dedicated Welsh QI person next to me who can just hear it.
Yeah.
Well, I've been on Radio 4 if I haven't told you, so maybe QI might be calling at some point. If Sandy wants to get in touch, I can do a bit of that.
Amdraw as well. Amdraw's a good one. I'll definitely watch out for that. We'll make sure we put that in the notes.
I'll give you a message. I'm gonna blast it all over my social media in a couple of weeks. However, no doubt they've made me look like even more of a fool than I am. I don't want to ruin it for you boys, right? But there was a point in it where I think we were in Sir Benfro in Pembrokeshire. Absolutely beautiful, great people we went around with as well. And at the end, if you've seen the programme, it's like Come Dine With Me, except instead of making food, you take them on a walk in your area, right? It's just, and we were taken around Pembrokeshire, and I've never been before properly. I've been to Tea there with St David's, and then I left again, so I haven't really seen that beautiful part of it. So I got to see it, and we were there, and after we just had some food. And you think when you watch the episode, you eat the food really quick. You don't. You're filming for about 5 hours before you even get to eat anything.
Yeah.
So by the time we did it, and I was doing an interview at the end, and they said, oeddet ti'n mwynhau'r bwyd hefyd? Did you enjoy the food? Oeddet ti'n mwynhau'r bwyd hefyd? And I said, well, it wasn't too, I said in Welsh, it wasn't too bad. I said, but after a long day of walking, and then I switched to English and went, and I didn't even mean this, I promise you. I said it was just what the doctor ordered. Right, ha 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 ha.
Very
but
good.
I took it further because I realised after I said it, and I turned to the camera, winked like the biggest chap going, and I went, just
Good
what
man.
Doctor Cymraeg ordered. At which point, I apologised profusely to the director and said, "I'm so sorry."
I've been on Radio 4, please.
Yeah, listen, please, you gotta allow it. Yeah,
it's a real melting pot right now.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say like
it is
when you mentioned come down.
No, but like I said, I'm so sorry I said that, and I said, look, it just came to me at the time. It was just a joke. Let's film it again. They went, nope, keeping that in. So if it comes up on the show, you have my apologies. I thought you
were going to say then when you mentioned come down with me, I thought you were going to be that guy when you went, someone went, oh, so what did you think of my walk? And someone else beat you. You went, what a sad little life, Jane. And just started on an absolute rant against someone.
I wasn't. I didn't. I was diplomatic.
Yeah.
And I was honest. So, So I can't believe I actually said just what the doctor ordered.
Oh, mate, I'm impressed.
And they said, no, we're leaving that in.
I think it's good.
Awful.
Do you have any favourite bits of info? Well, some like interesting, like pub. We often do things you can tell in the pub. So, like anything, if you're listening to this, you could take into a pub and be like, "This is a fun bit of Welsh trivia."
I feel what I tried to do, and in absolute honour of your wonderful podcast, guys, I wanted to try and really do a Venn diagram, but in the middle of a Venn diagram, a real big crossover. So I've come up with two terms that have sort of historical connotations to them.
Love it.
So, and nowadays we sort of use them as if, we'd say nowadays, oh, every cloud, in English sort of thing, comes from every cloud silver lining and all this sort of stuff. And then you sort of say dead as a doornail or whatever, all those sort of phrases in English and where they all come from. But there are some amazing ones out there. I mean, the first one is obviously Bwrw hen ragedd a ffyn, which is translates as raining old ladies and sticks. And it's believed that old ladies with their sticks walking down the road would make this tapping sound. Sounds a lot like heavy rain. So you've got that one. Dod at I goed is to come to one's senses, but it translates as to come to one's trees. And
Yeah.
it's this beautiful connotation of, knowledge coming from nature rather than sort of the head and all this sort of thing. And even the word druid,
Ah.
from which this time maybe even derived, derwydd in Welsh, the word in derwydd for druid comes from derw, which is our word for an oak tree.
Yeah.
So, it's all this connotation of trees being the host of this great knowledge. And I just love that phrase, to come to
I
one's
do love.
senses
I,
is
I
to
love
come
the
to
sort of
one's
thing
trees.
with Welsh as well. As I think I mentioned it somewhere. I can't remember if I mentioned it in an episode yet, but I was watching this YouTube video, and it was about. Funny enough, it was an English guy doing. But he's like a professor of like Welsh history and mythology and things like that, and he was saying like the reason Welsh was a very like romantic, poetic language, because like Old Welsh and like Middle Welsh and things like that, you could say in two lines what would take you a verse
Oh,
in
100%.
English, because our language was certain words could mean like three different things, you
Exactly.
know.
I mean, and that's the thing about Welsh. It's it's not a simple language, but it is a simplistic language in the sense that one term can cover so many things, and usually that's not a problem. It's just all right. All right. So ffordd means road and way. Gwlad means country and nation and land. It means all those things.
Yeah.
However, there are these beautiful little crossovers that, if you can get it right in poetry, hence why we give the chair at the Eisteddfod, because it really is what sometimes you can read a line and it can really hit you, and you can go, wow, like that's stupidly clever.
Yeah,
And
that's it. Not just at the sort of what would you say? What's the English word for like swinol? I can't think of that now.
don't do that to me now. Sort of
I know. So come on, I'm
melodious
testing you.
sort of thing, I suppose.
Melodious, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, melodious. But like you said, it's not just like how lovely it sounds on the ear, but also the cleverness
Oh
of
my
like
word.
structuring it like that. Yeah, it's I also read that what's called, is it Kung Hanev?
Yeah.
That's the only language that has that, or something.
Well, it
I
can
think
exist in other languages, but we're the ones who sort of really stick to it.
yeah, it's
I mean,
something that's
and it's in
very
English. Do you remember Young's? They were a fish company, weren't they? They'd sell fish cakes and things. Young's. I think they used to. Then they used to sort of
oh, the,
sponsor Grimsby Town Football Club as a lad.
oh mate,
So,
that's lost on me, fella. But
but either way, yeah,
yeah,
sorry, yeah, you're Southerners. You don't do the round ball, you lot, do you?
no,
I like
just
football.
me and Jim.
That's all right.
Yeah. So, but is it Young's fish dish of the day, people?
Is that
Exactly that. But if
thou
you
shalt
listen
have
to
a
that,
fishy?
you listen to that phrase. When was the last time that was on our TVs? If you listen to that phrase, Youngs make fish the dish of the day, and you think, hold on a minute, that's clever, because it's saying Youngs make fish the dish of the day, but it's telling you make fish the dish of the day. But what you've also got in there is fish and dish rhyme, and
Mm.
dish and day alliterate, which is actually Cynhanedd. And the
Oh no
reason
way!
we remember it so much is because Cynhanedd is so incredibly adept at making you remember how to
Mm.
say things and remember these nursery rhymes and stuff like that. We remember them so much. And Youngs make fish the dish of the day. You can't say that without sort of singing it. Do you know what I mean?
Do you
So
know?
you can do it in every language, but Welsh we love it, and it's as if don't write poetry unless you're writing in Cynhanedd.
I've got the book of the Godolphin,
Oh yes, what a
and
brilliant!
it's I've got like this sort of like a modern English translation.
I've got that as well.
But it keeps. Oh, is it? But I can't remember her name now.
Oh no, don't
The
do
girl
that.
who. Yeah, I can't remember the girl who wrote it.
She's
But
brilliant.
she's
She's
very
incredible.
very good, and explains in the foreword and everything about how bloody shit hot she is about it.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you read like this, like the is it Old Welsh or Middle Welsh? You're gonna have to
Godolphin would be late Old Welsh, I'd
late
say,
Old Welsh.
early
So,
middle. Yeah,
but
I
that
go
is
Old
like you
Welsh.
can. Don't get me wrong. I don't understand all of it because I'm I only know modern Welsh. But I
Yeah,
imagine for you, you probably I can pick up on the ingenuity in it. But even reading it, even though I don't know every single word,
yeah.
it's like oh, the
It
way it just
does
rolls,
something,
and
doesn't it?
it's it's beautifully done.
Mm.
If people like retellings and stuff, there's that book I mentioned before on here about the Mab. If you find things like that are
Yes.
quite difficult to understand, they have the
Mm.
Mabinogion, which is the new version by Matt Brown and Eloise Williams, which has like a forward by Michael Sheen, and it's got the Welsh on one side, and then it tells you the English again, and it's like kind of not modernized, but it's told in a way that makes more sense. Like it's um
That's
like
a good way of putting it. Yeah.
when we
More digestible, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, when we try to talk about the episode before, like how you have to stand on a goat and you have your foot in the bath, when you read that written down, it doesn't make sense. But when you have it told to you in a story form of how these things should be told,
Yes.
they make a lot more sense. So yeah, we'll put in the show descriptions. If you remember who the book was for the Good Dogs, I'll put that in the show
I
notes
got
as
it.
well. So we'll make
Got it
sure
on
we
my
credit them.
bookshelf, mate. Yeah. No worries.
Give me one. I can probably find it. I'm sure. I
Well,
don't know
whilst
whether
you
you
have
want
a
to
look,
call me out here.
you had a very um, I wouldn't say sincere, but that was a really poignant chat around language there. And I'm going to lower the tone by saying I like the word goody hoo. That's Welsh word for owl.
That is not lowering the tone at all. It was
Yeah.
Gillian Clark, by the way.
Gillian Clark.
Gillian Clark, that's the one.
But
Yeah.
you are not lowering the tone. And do you know what? I've got my little boy, he's 3 years old, and I teach him the word tylluan for an owl.
Yeah.
However, goody hoo. Goody hoo. I just think,
love it.
Yeah.
why is that not the Welsh word for everything? It's just brilliant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sort of every time he'll play with a little toy owl or something, and every time I say the word, oh, it's in whatever tylluan, you're playing with the owl, I just think, I wish my dialect used goody hoo.
Yeah.
Well,
That is not low, that is brilliant. I love it.
I've
And
got
I
a
also
good,
like-
I got a good. Well, oh, go on. You go first. You go first.
I was just going to say,
mine's
on
better
the,
for a third act.
just on that, I love that some things just make sense when you look at. So like pili pala, the Welsh word for butterfly, is a mad sounding word sometimes. It sounds very ethereal or otherworldly. But when you think butterflies look mad, they look like they could belong to fairies, and you know,
big
Wales being very kind of mythological. Imagine seeing an animal like that and a pili
When I
pala.
hear
Like
when I
sums
hear
it up.
Pili Pala, my brain goes flippy flappy, like
Oh,
in
yeah.
English.
Well, yeah,
You know what I
why
mean? It
not?
kind of makes sense.
The thing is, there's two other words for a butterfly in Welsh.
Yeah.
One is Iarfach yr Haf,
Oh
which
yeah.
is the
I love that.
little chicken of summer,
Little chicken of summer.
and then you've got glowing bew, which can either be it's sort of a little live wire in a way, but it can also suggest sort of the old miners with glow and things like that. So there's some really beautiful ones, and I'm so sorry, Jack. I bet you've got a mint one, but you've just reminded me now with this little chicken thing, with the little chicken of summer. So a hare in Welsh is a sgyfarnog, or as some people pronounce it, sgwarnog, right? A hare is in like a rabbit thing, right? However, there is one village, and I mean a village, tiny village in mid Wales called Pennant Melangell, named after one of only two female saints venerated in Wales, actually. And she was said to have saved a hare from a pack of dogs. And she's sort of the saint of hares and things like that. However, in this little village, and I swear in only this village, they do not call them sgwarnog. They call them Oen Fach Melangell, which is Melangell's little lambs.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
And that is the only place where everywhere else it's Sgwarnog or a Sgyfarnog, and you go
Oen
to that
Fach
place in
Melangell.
mid Wales and they will call them, they'll refer to them as Melangell's little lambs. And I just think, this is what I mean. If we were not to support this language and just give it our best shot, this is the kind of shit you lose, you know?
Definitely.
Yeah. You can't have one, can you? Like one sort of. That's the perfect way to speak it. Like you said, you lose all these little
Well, history is a
lovely
language,
little
isn't it?
fringes and phrases. Like they're so good.
It's like history.
Yeah.
Like you learn so much about how, like the etymology is a direct link to your past, and
Exactly. It tells
think,
you
yeah.
everything. I couldn't agree more, and I'm gonna proper annoy Jack now. And I'm there was one final. You mentioned now about linking to social history. There's one other phrase in Welsh called talcen caled, which means you've got a hard job ahead of you. But talcen is a forehead, and the idea is that I believe that if you've got a strong forehead, it's the kind of thing you're going to need a strong forehead. With the miners, you're going to need a strong forehead to go and mine down there because you're going to bash your head. And the story is now it's just sort of morphed into, oh, my talcen caled blind. You've got a big task above you, but essentially it means you better have a strong forehead. And that's where and I just think, I promise I've finished now, Jack.
We love it, mate.
Mate, honestly,
but
don't
I
worry,
love
you're
it,
not
and it's
only-
just,
the thing I'm going to come out with is really going to lower the tone. So
Jack, I'm
just
up
do
for
the
it.
good
Let's go.
stuff.
Come on, I've made you wait long enough, mate.
Okay, right, you've asked for it now. So, if I don't know if you guys remember the rhegiadur on
Yes.
Do you remember Treigiadur? So for those who don't know, it was like an unofficial collection of Welsh swear words, vulgar
Yeah.
phrases, and the like.
And the play
kind of like an
play on
urban.
word for it, because like geiriadur
Yeah.
is dictionary, and then
Yeah.
regi is
Treigiadur is like swear dictionary, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like an urban dictionary for Welsh words.
Yeah.
It's an absolute travesty in my mind that it's no longer around, for one. But one
That's what Doctor
phrase I
Cymraeg's
remember.
for, mate.
Well, yeah, mate,
How
you
do you
got to
say
bring it
fuck
back.
in Welsh?
Yeah, exactly. But one phrase I remember from it very well. I keep it with me to this day, near my breast, near my bron, right?
Oh, yes.
And it's basically a term for when you have a really bad case of the shits, and it's khaki babies plastic.
No way.
Or in the English, shit in plastic babies. And I
I'm
don't
not
know about you
having
guys, but I really resonated with that. And I thought, I've never, such a term is so evocative, and you can really conjure an image in your mind. So so I'm glad you guys said all the really nice ones before that.
I can't. I definitely should have let you go first. I'm here talking about the wisdom of the fucking trees, and you're talking about shit in plastic babies.
Literally,
I definitely should have let you
shat
go
plastic
first.
babies all over your lovely stuff there.
Well, on that sour note, should we bring things to an end? And we were going to have a bunch of questions to ask you, but I think really you've kind of I think they're a bit more conversational than us being a bit more formulaic and saying, "How did you get into this?" But
You've
I
sort
think
of answered a lot of those questions.
yeah, we kind of know why you
before,
got into this and how.
I think I've sort of got my life story in there at some point. Did I mention I've been on Radio 4?
Not yet, but tell us about that.
Very good.
We'll link to all the stuff that you do, but I'm sure most
I
people know.
appreciate that.
We just search Doctor Cymraeg. We'd love to get you back on, and if any of our fans who enjoyed this have any other questions or anything they'd like to learn, any of the Welsh language learners have any questions, maybe we can send them on to you. You could
Please do. Yeah, I'd
because I
love
know
that.
loads of our people who've listened really, really, really do value what you do, and so do we. So we're really grateful for being this bastion of Welsh language and making it accessible and funny and just entertaining. It's sometimes Welsh can be so serious, and I think you've really managed to combat that. So diolch yn
I
fawr.
think you do the same with this. I think I was thinking about this on the way here, and I was thinking about why your stuff is so appealing to me and things, because these are heavy subjects. These are what shaped us as people: the language, the history, the social history. And to put this bit of a slight, you mentioned sort of being in the pub and just sort of celebrating rather than, and I think you guys do it well too, and I think that's why I reckon, whereas the popularity is sort of gravitating to it, and it's great to be a part of, isn't it? And honestly, guys, diolch yn fawr iawn. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you guys for hours, and next time I'm down in the capital, I'll definitely give you a shout.
I was just about to say, if we're ever up Flintshire way, we'll be knocking your door, giving you the code melting pot.
Yeah, we know where you live now.
Go for a sesh.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Before we let you go, we want to say thank you so much for coming on, for one. But do you want to say to everyone listening sort of where they can find you, what you're about, anything like that? Give them a little sort of the tidbit of sort of who you are and how to find you, etc.
Boys, I'd be honoured. Thank you. Yeah, but honestly, if you just whack Doctor Cymraeg into any sort of search engine, you'll find my stuff. I started on Twitter a few years ago, and that's at Cymraeg Doctor. Madly enough, Doctor Cymraeg was taken, and I'm mainly doing stuff on Instagram now. And aside from having been on Radio 4, I'm also pretty close to hitting. I'm also pretty close to hitting 50k, which is it's absolutely blown my mind, and I'm grateful to every single person who decides to follow. So
we'll find me over that line. That's the job for Tales Wales to listeners. Please go over there and get him over 50.
Come on, lads, let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm at Doctor Cymraeg there, and I do a couple of things on YouTube. So have a look on there, and I also sell a few books and stuff like that. So if you search Doctor Cymraeg, you'll probably come across those.
We'll put it all in the show notes as well, so you can find it from there. Well, diolch yn gwrando. Thanks for listening, everyone. We have the Patreon. We have all our stuff. Leave us 5-star reviews. It helps with discoverability and all that malarkey. The stuff we normally shout at you at the end of the episode. But thanks for all the continued support. It does mean the world to us. And we'll catch you all soon. Diolch yn fawr. Cheers.
Thank you all. Cheers now. Ta-ra, ta-ra, ta-ra.